While many businesses have been able to move some of their operations online, the travel industry obviously can't do that. And that's left my next guest, travel champion Rick Steves, somewhere he doesn't often find himself this time of year, at home, with no trips of any kind scheduled for the next few months for him or his tour company, which also puts out travel guides and, of course, his PBS show, Rick Steves Europe. He joined me yesterday to talk about how he and his company have been adjusting. Rick, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for checking in.
Thanks. Nice to be with you.
So this is not the first deep trauma we have all lived through where things were shut down. But was the impact of 9/11 on what you do anywhere close to what the impact of this has been?
No, I skated right through 9/11. I skated right through 2008. And this is the only time I've really been in crisis as a tour organizer.
But, you know, speaking of crisis, I read that you have kept your whole staff on the payroll, apparently costing you millions of dollars. Why'd you make that decision?
Well, it's an ethical thing to do. I've got 100 people on my payroll, and I've made a lot of money over the years in my company. I happen to be a privately held corporation, so I'm essentially the sole stockholder. And rather than giving all that profit away in dividends, you know, I've profited over the years. I don't think it's a good environment for anybody out there looking for a job, and we all have to hold it together just so our community stays intact. That's the ethical end of it. The practical end of it for me as the owner of a business is I want to have my company together when we come out of this crisis. And if it costs me a lot of money in the interim, that's part of doing business. I take the good years with the bad, and I'm hoping in a year or two or maybe a little more that, you know, international travel will be back to the norm, and we'll have our staff together, and then we can throttle up and pick up where we left off of helping Americans travel smartly in Europe.
Let's talk about that year or two. I can't even envision people getting back on a plane. I saw a poll this morning that said it would be at least 6 months before more than half of Americans said they'd even stay in a hotel, much less get on an airplane. How do you see travel coming back, Rick?
I see it coming back slowly and incrementally, and I'm in no hurry to jump the gun. We were ready to have our best year ever at Rick Steves Europe. Last year we had 30,000 Americans sign up on 1,000 different tours of ours. This year we were on track to beat that. We were just on a business high 2 months ago. Our guidebooks are just doing better than ever. I've got 50 different guidebooks and love our staff of guides. I've got 100 guides in Europe that are ready to go. And then all of a sudden, everything shut down. I had to give 24,000 people their deposits back as we canceled tours over the course of the year. And we're holding on some hope that there'll be tours this fall, but I'm prepared as the CEO for the worst scenario. And I'm not going to jump the gun when things start to open up. I'm going to be very conservative because I don't want people to go through the anxiety of, do I want to get on a plane? Do I want to go over there when things might be interrupted? Do I want to turn off tours and try to get people home? Do I want people going through quarantines? I want none of that. A big part of tour organizing for me is to tackle the anxiety that can come with travel and help people get around it so you can have an anxiety-free trip. So I think it's going to be slow. I think first it'll be regional travel. French people will go to the French Riviera. The Italians will go to Tuscany. The Swiss people will go hiking. And then there'll be individuals traveling after that who would be the first international travelers. And then organized travel, you know, bus tours like I like to lead. That'll come after that. But it's going to take a while, and I'm realistic about that.
You know, you don't just lead tours, you lead a family. And I read that you had a pretty personal thing planned for mid-June to celebrate your daughter's marriage. Is that on a back burner now?
Yeah, that's on a back burner. I like to say it's not canceled, it's just put on hold. But it's going to be the trip of my lifetime. I've been leading tours around Europe since I was a kid, and I booked out, this is sort of a exciting time for me because my son is one of our ace tour guides now. That's great. And Andy was going to be our tour guide. I was going to be on vacation. It was the first time I'd be on one of our Best of Europe in 20-day trips, actually on vacation. And I had put together 24 people who were the extended family of my daughter's fiance and some of my relatives who had never been to Europe. And it broke my heart to send out the email a week ago saying, this tour is not going to happen this year, but we fully hope to do it next year.
You know, one of the reasons why I think many people like me swear by Rick Steves is because you take us to places and to meet people that we wouldn't have met, nor would we have seen otherwise. Those seem to be the kinds of places, though, that are most likely not to survive. The small cafes, the grocers. How much do you worry about that?
You know, I worry about that in our own society as well as in the destinations we're going to be traveling to. You know, people, we need to realize that we shape our own future by how we care about people and how we consume. And, you know, if the only thing that survives is Amazon, I mean, I think Amazon is pretty efficient and it deserves its place. But if you turn your back on all the small businesses, it's going to mess up the fabric of our communities, what we really appreciate. And for me, the mark of good travel is how many people do you meet, not how many good deals do you get. And our tour program, my guidebooks, my TV shows on public television, they're all about meeting people, making friends, getting friendly with the other 96% of humanity. It's so exciting. And for me, that's the big heartbreak of this. A friend of mine runs a museum in the United States, and they're closed down. And he figures a third of all the museums that have closed down will not reopen in our country. It's the same with small shops and cafes and restaurants.
You know, we've spent a lot of time in the last few weeks on this show and out in the world talking about what does education look like after this? What is the workplace? Yeah. What does healthcare look like? What does the travel world look like, and how different will it be? I don't just mean in the short term, but what kind of changes will this bring out long term?
You know, I think in the medium term or the short term, it will be people with masks and people not touching each other and so on. But I just hope and pray in the long term that it is back to normal. I do not want to surrender to this virus and never touch people again. And when the French people kiss your cheek, and when I, give a nice hug to a friend in Portugal, or when I sit down and share a beer with somebody in Ireland, I don't want to worry about, did you touch that drumstick, or can I play that, and can I strum your guitar for a moment here? I had some of my staff was trying to envision how we would start up again, and I really pitched in and said, I'd rather just wait a little bit until we can actually have people-to-people travel. So who knows? But what makes things viable, what makes a flight affordable, what makes a tour bus affordable, what makes having a great artist coming to a small venue in my town affordable is packing the house. And if we can't pack the house, pack the plane, pack the bus, that's going to be a real threat to what we really treasure about our culture.
So by my calculation, I think you're usually in the Mediterranean this time of year. Instead, you're in your house in Edmonds, Washington. I read a story about you the other day that I thought might have been in The Onion. It says you have never, speaking of onion, and that was not intended, you've never cut one. You have never used an oven. You have never made pasta. And is this all true?
This is true. This is true.
And are you a changed man?
Well, I'm realizing there's more to life than being productive. There's more to life than getting on an airplane and going to Europe and hiking. And I'm really enjoying. I'm very blessed and to be able to live in a beautiful corner of the country. I've got a nice house, and we have the opportunity now to kind of just enjoy this lockdown and dust off old passions. And there's a lot of old passions that get neglected. And I'm finding it's just a joy to realize that things I was passionate about as a kid, I can be passionate about again now, because otherwise I'm just a happy workaholic. I've found my mission and my niche, and I just love running my business. But I honestly I've lived in this house for 10 years. I never turned on that oven. And now I know how it works. And it's funny because when you do cut through an onion, that's a sensation that if you've never done it, you go, wow, I've never done that before. I was just on my last trip abroad. I was in Colombia visiting my son down in South America. And we flew from Bogota to the resort town on the beach. And I was with short pants on an airplane. And I remember my knees touched the seat in front of me on the airplane. And it occurred to me, I've never been on an airplane in short pants. That it's like that. I didn't realize it, but my knees touching that chair in front of me, I realized that. Well, cutting through an onion, I thought, wow, I'm 64 years old and I've never done that. And it was really fun. And then people give me olive oil all the time because I've got friends in Italy. So I've got all this olive oil and I just regift it because I didn't know what to do with olive oil. Now I'm going to start hoarding that olive oil. I love and appreciate olive oil. So, that's a kind of a silly silver lining, but it's my hope that this crisis, we can maintain the fabric of our communities and we can realize, again, there's more to life than being productive. And also, it's a humbling thing to see that we're not in control of nature, and maybe it's a wake-up call. So I'm hoping something good will come out of this, and also that we'll be back traveling again.
That's sort of, you describe yourself as militantly optimistic on your Twitter account. While this president has an us against the rest of the world mentality, don't you think this coronavirus in a perversely positive way will bring us closer to our neighbors around the world, Rick?
Well, so anybody who has a reasonable grip on how are we going to live together in the future needs to realize that it's not the art of the deal. To me, the art of the deal is win-lose. And in the future, it's got to be, if it's not win-win, it's lose-lose. I don't want win-lose. I want win-win in a way that's sustainable and that we can understand that we're all precious children of God and we've got to share this beautiful planet together. We can do it, but we've got to just get real about community and taking care of each other.
One other video I think we all want to see soon is you chopping an onion. So if you can make that available as quickly as possible, we'd appreciate it. Rick, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
So nice to talk to you, and best wishes.
Thanks. And for those who are feeling travel deprived, Rick recommends what he calls travel dreaming via his PBS shows and his blog, where he and his staff have been posting plenty of content celebrating locations around the world. You can find it all at blog.ricksteves.com.